For anyone paying attention, they notice that the trend in business is more and more vegan businesses are entering the arena. And yet there are those businesses that hesitate thinking, will I lose business? What will people think? Is there a big enough market reach? In today's episode, I talk with Kayleigh Nicolaou of Kakadu Creative. And with what Kayleigh shares, you're going to be amazed at why now, more than ever, is the best time if you're a vegan business to put your hat in the ring, really jump in and go full force as a vegan-owned business. Stick around. You are in for a great, great treat as I talk with Kayleigh.
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
Well, Kayleigh, I am fascinated by your business model because you actually are a vegan who is running somewhat of a vegan business, and you target vegan businesses and you help them to grow. So let's start with you sharing a little bit about how you came to be a vegan, when you made that decision, what was your motivator? And then I want to talk about how that influences your business.
Yeah, sure. So I came to veganism relatively slowly. It was several years ago. My mum got diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's adopted, so we don't know the family history. And when she got the diagnosis, we asked about having the genetic test to see if myself and my sister were predisposed to obviously developing cancer, or breast cancer, I should say. But because we didn't know the history, they wouldn't do the test, which we found really unusual, because you think, well, if you don't know the history, you would be more inclined to do the test. But apparently the only reason they do the gene test is if they know you've got a history, then it's a way for them to check the science. Oh, I don't know. So for whatever reason, they said, no, we couldn't have this test to check whether we were predisposed to breast cancer. So I kind of went away from that and thought, well, then I need to try and find ways to limit my risk. And what can I do day to day that will help me to minimize that risk? Because I obviously didn't want to go through all of that. And it was at the same time that it was around the same time that the World Health Organization had released a report stating that processed and red meat were linked carcinogenics. They were known carcinogenics. And that made me sort of stop in my tracks and say, wow, okay, I hadn't really ever really considered that your food, I know your food can make you unhealthy, but I'd never really considered the fact that it could generate disease. And that was kind of a new thing to me. So I started looking into it. And I said to Lee when I came home at one point, I said, look, I want to try being vegan. No, it was at the time it was vegetarian. I said, I want to go vegetarian, thinking he'd say no, man eats meat and all of that kind of thing. And he was really open to it and said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And so we started down the path of cutting out meat from our diet. And then I think anyone who's been on that journey, as soon as you then start opening your eyes up to milk, dairy, and then it wasn't just the health aspect, it was the environmental aspect, and of course the animal impact. And once we started to connect with all of that, it just became inevitable that veganism was the only option. And so it's been 4 or 5 years now that we've both been fully vegan. And then it was about 2 years ago that we said we want to start thinking about bringing it to the front of our business. And then we transitioned the business to start vocally talking about veganism and ethics and sustainability. It was something we always did in the background. We always ran the business as a vegan business, and we always ran it sustainably, but we didn't talk about it for fear of turning customers off. And actually, we're really pleased that we made that jump. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more. But that's kind of the journey to where we are now.
Well, it's so interesting because, I went through the same thing where I've had my business 28 years. And when the pandemic hit, I'm a keynote speaker. And when the pandemic hit, literally 80% of my business got wiped out overnight because they canceled all the conferences. I had a big contract. I was waiting for, it was about a $17,500 gig that I was doing, that they were signing the papers. They were going to send the deposit check the next day. And that was when the shutdowns happened. And I was like, oh, shoot. And that was just one speaking gig, so you can well imagine how much it impacted my business. And yet, as I stepped back, and 2020 was a rough year for a lot of us, and I looked at it and I said, okay, what are the things that I've been thinking of changing? And one was to be more visible around being vegan. And so I rebranded as Vegan Visibility. I was on a run one day. I run on a regular basis, and that's when I get some of my best ideas. And it was like, vegan visibility. That's what people need, vegan visibility. And it was like, oh my gosh. And the URL was available, and I kind of let the pieces fall into place. But I want to take a step back on the health aspects. We're going to talk mostly business today, but myself, I'm at very high risk of colon cancer. They found precancerous in me and all this stuff. And at first I got to play the victim role, like, oh my gosh, look at what happened to me. And then I started looking at my role in that. And I realized that what I ate contributed to it. And so I've been vegan coming up on 4 years, and I started plant-based because I didn't want to be a crazy vegan. And now I'm very proudly a crazy vegan. But what I discovered was your family history is minimal compared to what you have on the end of your fork. And a lot of people, they either don't know that, or if they hear that, they don't want to believe it because it means that it's about personal responsibility. So moving into when you made the decision to be more visible around running a vegan business, what were your greatest concerns when you first made that decision? And how quickly were those concerns put to rest?
Yeah, so it was something that we were quite nervous about in regards to losing customers or struggling to find customers. How big is the market? Are there going to be enough people out there that we'll be able to work with? Are we niching down too much? Interestingly, you said, about how you transitioned with the pandemic. That was the same thing for us. That was an opportunity where we stopped. We had quite a lot of projects that went on hold or got cancelled because businesses were just shutting or didn't know if they'd ever reopen and all the rest of it. And so as stressful as that was at the time, actually we sat back and said, okay, well, this gives us an opportunity to really look at the business and see where we're going. We were 3 years old, two and a half years old at that point. So we're still a relatively young business. And we kind of said, right, are we going in the direction we wanted to go in? And realistically, while the customers that we were working with were nice customers and we got on well with them, they were what we sort of term neutrally ethical. They weren't doing anything good, they weren't doing anything bad. And we sat back and said, is this what we wanted? When we left sort of a big corporate media company, and you had a really good salary and all the rest of it, you had a really nice career out ahead of you, we left that because that didn't fulfill us. And are we now being fulfilled by the business that we've got now? And the answer to that was kind of no, really. It was still much of the same. And so that gave us the sort of the question of, well, then do we start bringing our ethics to the front? Is that going to fulfill us more? And the answer to that was yes, we would feel more fulfilled if we were working with vegan and ethical businesses and using our skills to support them and to help them grow. But where the world was in such a turmoil, it felt like a relative risk to niche down even more when there wasn't as much business out there as there was in the past. But we spoke to a few people. We had a chat with a marketing consultant, and in the end, we got to the point where it was like, no, this is the right decision for us. We need to try it. We need to see whether this will work. And quite quickly, probably within 3 to 6 months, we said, right, this was the best thing we've done, because we didn't lose any business. No, there were no customers that said, you're vegan, I didn't realize you were vegan, I don't want to work with you. There was no one saying, oh, you're talking about the environment and protecting the environment. We hate that. We don't, no one said that.
I can't do business with you. You love the environment.
Exactly. No one said that. And it was really interesting because when we realized that nobody was going to hate us for caring, we sort of sat back and said, why on earth did we ever think that anyone would care that and not want to work with us? And on the flip side, we sort of said, well, if there were people that didn't want to work with us because we care about animals and the environment and our health and all the rest of it, we don't want to work with them. So actually,
exactly.
It's the right decision. And so, yeah, it's been one of the best moves we've made for the business.
Well, and I'm glad you said that. And before we get into that further, I want to remind people that this is Kayleigh Nicolaou. You're listening to the Vegan Visibility Show, and I'm talking with Kayleigh, who is with Kakadu. Did I pronounce that right?
You did, yeah.
Creatives. And what is your website so people can go and I love your website because, I mean, talk about creative. You really walk the talk. And I looked at the portfolio of clients you've worked with, and I love how you explain it. So I encourage people, check out the website, if for no other reason, just to see a very, very creative website. So
yeah, it's KakaduCreative.com, which is KAKADU creative, all one word, .com.
Excellent. And we'll put that in the show notes. But, I'm so glad you mentioned that it took about 3 to 6 months before it really started building up again. And what I found, what I did to immerse myself, because I'm a marketing strategist and I've worked with many, many clients over the years, thousands of clients with digital products, and then one-on-one hundreds of clients. And one of the things I've always recommended is, if you want to get visible really quick, create a summit. You're the center of it, and you bring in all the heavy hitters, the players that are in that industry. And so what I did is I created the Vegan Visibility Summit. I went to 10 people within the industry who I knew were very well known. Katrina Fox was one, Lisa Fox and David Pinnell, and just a number of amazing, Elizabeth Alfano, John
Stephanie
Oberg.
Red Cross as well, didn't you?
What's that?
Stephanie Red Cross as well.
Yes, Stephanie Red Cross. Yes, she was on there too. And so what I did is I had to build their trust first. So, there's a whole process to building visibility within an industry. And I put my heart and soul into this. It was a huge success. And immediately my name rose to the top. So I went from being somewhat of an unknown to being very well known in a very short period of time through what I called borrowed credibility. I borrowed their credibility and rose up to the top. Now, every new client that I get is within the vegan industry. And I'm working on a huge event right now that came to me because I'm vegan and because they wanted to work with a vegan business. So let's talk about that. When people have that concern of like, oh my gosh, if I'm too visible about being a vegan, I just won't have any business. How big is our market? I would imagine, it's huge.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, yes, if you compare it to the mainstream business as usual markets, yes, it's small. Yes, it's niche. But actually, think about like the global population and the number of businesses in the UK and in the US globally. And then you say, okay, well, so even if it's 5%, for example, of that millions of businesses out there, realistically, none of us need 5% of all of those businesses to work with each other, especially if you're a service-based business. And so you kind of sit back and you say, well, realistically, how many clients do we need to work with in a year? There's plenty out there. It's just getting yourself in front of them. And that was the thing as well, when we really started to look at the numbers. And it's funny you mentioned David and Lisa at Vegan Business Tribe, because they were two people that we spoke to when we were just looking at, do we make this transition? And we had the same conversation with them, what's the size of the market? And it was David that said, well, how many clients do you actually need? And I said, oh,
He's
yeah.
brilliant. Yes,
Yeah, we don't need a lot. We're not a massive agency. We don't want offices all over the globe. We want to stay small and agile, and we just said, yeah, of course, it's plenty big enough for us.
Well, you're hitting on some really important points, which you said we don't want to be, have offices in a number of cities. We want to stay a certain size, more like a boutique. And I think that's important for people to evaluate, because I know at one point in my business, I hired a business consultant that I invested a lot of money in her expertise, and it was valuable information. But her vision for my business was different than mine. And yet I was going along for the ride. I was growing. And the amount of stress that went with that was pretty phenomenal. And what I realized is I would rather work with a small group of clients that I can impact their business to help them reach their clients. So When you work with your clients, what are your most successful marketing strategies or ways that you are seen by potential clients, and then the enrollment process? How do you decide who you work with?
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny when you say about what's the most effective way to get in front of the clients. I've not cracked that personally, and I've spoken to quite a few different creatives. We've connected with quite a lot of other creatives in both the vegan industry and externally, and we always generally one of us will ask the other. So how do you find your client? What's the golden ticket? And everyone says, I haven't found it yet.
Right.
And so for us, it's really just been about being present. And building a network and building connections and being genuine. And I think this is one of the things that really has reassured us, or has sort of given us the confidence to keep doing what we're doing and keep talking about veganism and ethics and sustainability, because it was something when we were having a conversation with the marketing consultant, we were thinking about making this transition. And initially he said, I'm not really sure whether you should do it because, again, it's a niche business and you might turn clients off and all the rest of it. And then actually the more we talked about it, and the further we got through the process, he said, no, do you know what? It's absolutely right for you guys, because you mean it. And you're genuine and you're not just ticking a box and you're not greenwashing and you really care, and that will come across. And I think that's for us just been our biggest sort of marketing tactic, if you want, is just being genuine and just really being people. Yeah,
absolutely.
And just none of that sort of spin or flashiness. We're just down to earth.
And it's also showing up in a number of different ways, because, I have clients that'll say, what's that one thing that I need to do? And it's like, well, here's one thing, then here's another. Like, okay, get on podcast shows like what you're doing right now. This is a great way to create value for people, to showcase your expertise. And then people go visit your website and maybe they set up an initial meeting. They do an assessment. I mean, there's a whole journey that we take people through.
Yeah.
Writing books. Matali, I'm sure you know who Matali is. She's launching her book in a few days. And she actually rebranded. I've been working with Matali for a while, and she rebranded or came up with a second label, an imprint, which is The Vegan Publisher.
Yeah.
And she had people advising her against that and people advising her to do it. You have to go with your gut. Another is blogging. Another is social media. So there's no magic push button. Yeah.
No, and that's what we found. It's been a combination of networking, of our social media, our emails. We do a free video audit, a website audit. There's loads of different things, and it can sometimes feel a bit like, oh my God, there's so much to manage. But actually, you need that, because not everybody goes down the same marketing channel. Right, people will come to you from different ways, and so you need all of those different touch points to enable yourself to reach as many people as you can. So well,
and what I love about the fact that you do a website analysis is your website is credibility in and of itself. And again, I encourage people to go to your website, and it's Kakadu Creative, and it's Kakadu Creative or Creatives?
Creative, singular.
Okay. And so we'll, again, put that in the show notes, and it'll be running across the video when they watch it on YouTube. But I had somebody, this was so bizarre. We changed our website, and I have a team of people that they did a great job with it. And it had just gone live. And I had somebody reach out to me and say, I was looking at your website and I'd like to give you some feedback on it and give you some recommendations on how to improve it. And I'm thinking, whoa, okay. And I mean, that was the approach. And I went to look at this person's website and I thought, okay, you've completely lost credibility. It looked like something that was built in the 80s. But with your site, if somebody like you came to me and said, hey, can I give you a little feedback? Probably you wouldn't approach it in that way. So what do you see when you're working with clients? What do you see as some of the most important areas that people need to focus on in order to build their business and gain that visibility? What are missing elements that seem to be part of what people do?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the size of business, but if you're sort of looking at I think the businesses that need the most help and advice generally are in the SME sector, because they generally don't have the budgets to bring on specialists and consultants to help them. So that's generally the sector where we see the most need, almost opportunity for people to really level up. And it's normally around their branding and their website. And I think there are two areas where SME businesses will quite often neglect because they don't really understand the value of them. And the amount of conversations we've had with people in the past where you talk about branding and they say, oh, but it's just a logo. It's just a logo, isn't it? And it's like, no, your brand is so much more than a logo. It's everything about your business. And it's not just the visual side of the business. It's also everything behind the scenes. It's how you talk to your clients. You mentioned onboarding process. It's your onboarding process. It's your project management process. It's how you complete a project and, you know, how you leave that client and the feeling that you give them. There's so much that goes into a brand and a brand experience that people don't realize. And even if you don't have a logo and you think, well, I don't even have a brand, actually you still do, because you still talk to people on the phone, you still have voicemail messages, you still have emails. There's still an element of a brand that people will experience when they come to your business. So I think that's an area where people really neglect it and don't realize how much it then impacts the business. And the other is a website. So many people neglect their website, and actually it's one of a business's best members of staff, if you think about it, because it doesn't take sick leave, it doesn't take holiday, it's there 24/7, no matter where your potential client is from. You know, if you're in the UK and your client's in New Zealand, well, that's a 12-hour time difference. So you can't always be there to serve those people, but your website can. So, you know, they're two areas that get really neglected, but are so powerful to help a business level up and grow and succeed. Absolutely.
And a really good idea for people who want a lot of visibility is a media page on their website. Yeah. And a lot of people neglect that. They don't keep up to date on it. So, you know, there's so many elements to the success, but I love what you say about everything that we do is part of our branding, because it's how do we answer the phone, you know, and like me, I go, it's a great day at Vegan Visibility. This is Kathleen. And because I want to set the tone for our conversation. I've been known to tell my clients I love them. And I sincerely mean that, because I love the people I work with. And if I don't love them, if I can't stand them, I'm not going to work with them. It's really quite simple. You know, so even when we go out in public, I remember going to a networking meeting and this woman was an image consultant and she had runs in her nylons. And I thought, you know, it's those little things that make all the difference in the world. So let's say somebody is really interested in working with you. What's the process that they go through? What do they need to do to have that initial conversation? And how would they reach you directly?
Yeah, so I mean, the easiest way is to go to our website. So on our website, there's contact forms, phone numbers, links to our social media. So whichever way they want to get in contact with us, that's going to be the easiest way. Or if they want to get in contact with me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to contact me. But I'd say realistically, the website is the best place to go. So that's obviously kakadocreative.com, which we've covered already. And then the process really depends on what they need, but generally it starts with a discovery call, because there's only so much you can do over email. I think anyway, it's very much, we get people contacting us and saying, can I have a price for a website? And you know, and it's like, well, I need to talk to you. I need to understand why you even have messaging me. What's the situation with your current website? Why do you feel you need a new one? Is it that you don't have one and you're starting a new business? Is it that you've got one and it's not delivering the results? Is it because you know that there are problems with it that you've just never had a chance to overcome? Is it that you want to add new functionality? You know, there's so much to it. And so you have to have that conversation. And also a big thing for us is that we set the business up because we like working with people. And I mean, just to give you a bit of a touch point on where I was before we set Kakadu Creative up, I'd been going up the career ladder in advertising and marketing for a big media company. And I'd gone past the point where I was dealing with the business owner or the people that were in the business every day. And I was now dealing with the big London agencies. And it just became soulless. And I'd just lost my passion for it because I wasn't working with people who were passionate about the work we were doing. And so that's why it's very much a case of I want to get on that phone call. I want to have a conversation, whether it's over the phone, whether it's on a Zoom, whether it's Google Meets, whatever it is. Microsoft Meets, I can't remember, whatever it is. I want to have that conversation to really be able to dig in to the business and understand why you came to us in the first place. How can we help you? And really understand the goals so we can do the best work for that client.
Well, and I've had people, they'll reach out to me and they go, how much will it cost for X, a book launch, let's say? And it's like, I don't even know if I can work with you. It's like, let's have a conversation. And, or how much money am I going to make from this campaign? It's like, well, I don't know, because I don't know your work ethic. So we have to have an initial conversation. But as you look at the vegan world of business and where we're moving, there's so many different facets to the industry. You have the vegans who, if somebody doesn't identify 100% as a vegan and they've given up anything that's animal based, they are not a true vegan, where we go through degrees of how we come to this lifestyle. And then there are people that call themselves plant-based and all of that. Where do you see the industry going? Where do you see the movement of veganism going? And we'll start with that. And then I have another question that's a follow-up on that.
So I see it growing exponentially. It's so interesting to see how the conversations around veganism are changing, and actually it's becoming so normalized, especially here in the UK. It's everywhere. I mean, the amount of products that are being launched into the supermarkets, for example, the ranges are just growing and growing and growing. And the fact that the supermarkets themselves are now releasing their own branded lines tells me that they see the business growing, because they wouldn't invest in that level with their own brand if they didn't see it growing. And so I think where all of this is coming through, it means that there are now more and more opportunities for the general consumer to try veganism and sort of dip their toe in the water. And then once, sort of I mentioned, how we started on the vegetarian route, and you start on that journey and you end up inevitably at veganism. It feels like the more opportunities there are at the moment for people to just start on that journey, the more likely we are, in a couple of years' time, to just have a huge vegan explosion. And I see it growing much more outside of the food sector as well. People say vegan and they think it's food, but actually, as it's not. Veganism is a lifestyle. It's not just the food we eat, but the food is a really easy entry point. Right. And I think that as we get more people coming into the movement that way, they'll then start thinking about what else they do in their life, and they'll start looking at the animal exploitation and the environmental impact as well. There's so much conversation around meat and dairy and cattle and the impact they have on the environment and deforestation. And I think the more people are seeing these messages and seeing this information, again, the more likely they will be to start looking at alternatives. And the best alternative is veganism. So I see the sector growing. I can't see it going in reverse. And I've had this conversation with Matali before. We've both said we would love to have a vegan world in our lifetime where veganism is the norm and meat and dairy is the weird thing.
That would be awesome. That, I'm going to be 68 in a few days, and I'm thinking, well, if I keep eating this healthy, I'll live for enough years to see a bigger impact. But what would you recommend to people that they're so rigid in their definition of veganism? And I'll give you a great example. I was at my bank recently and doing some work with my banker, and one of the gals in the office, she overheard the name of my business, and she said, "Oh, I'm trying veganism." I said, "Great." I said, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Well, my husband and I were doing a vegan diet and da da da." And I'm going, "That is so awesome." I said, "Can I give you some recommendations on books that might help you understand it better and some recipes?" And instead of saying, "It's not a diet, why are you even talking?" And I've been attacked because I've talked about by vegans because I've mentioned I'm a plant-based eater, vegan. And they're like, "No, it's only vegan." And what would you recommend to people that are really kind of pushing people away? They're so new to this that they really don't understand all the languaging, and to embrace them. How can we kind of tear those walls down?
Yeah, I think it's a really big to be fair, no, I don't think it's a challenge. Because I think it's a big challenge. I don't think it's a big challenge. From my own personal perspective, if someone had been preachy to me or had been militant to me, it would have just switched me off. I needed to be guided. And I've had this conversation with people before, because I do environmental activism, and as well as obviously the business of veganism and everything. And I was having a conversation before with someone around militant activists, and we shouldn't have them, and they have a bad reputation, and they smear the movement and all the rest of it. And I had this conversation. I said, look, we need all people. We need people that are open and inviting and softly, and here's a few tips and tricks and guidance. And we need other people who are out there really shoving it in people's faces, because not everyone's the same. And some people do need that real wake up call, and others need to be led and held by the hand and guided. And I think we have to recognize that there's no one size fits all process for bringing people into the vegan movement. And so we have to adapt, and we have to be willing to have conversations and be open and listen, and not just talk at people and tell them what they should be doing. We should be listening to them and understanding what they need. And like, one of the things, it's interesting you say about the person in the bank asking you for advice. So one of our clients that we had before we brought all of our veganism and ethics and sustainability to the front of the business, he didn't know, he didn't know that we were vegan, and we worked with him for 2 years prior to bringing it all forward. And so we obviously started talking about it, and then he started having conversations with me. And then it was a few months ago, he said, I actually think I want to try veganism. Can you give me some advice and tips? I was like, yeah, totally. Here you go. Here's some links. Try this. This is some of our favorite recipes. They're really easy and they're really filling, and they feel, really home cooked, and you don't feel like you're missing anything and all the rest of it. And just said, if you need any advice, just let me know, but try this, see how you get on. And I felt that was what he needed. He didn't need me saying, oh, well, it's not a diet, and have you watched this video of farm animals and all this? He needed me to just help him. And so that's what I did. And so I think we need to recognize that we're all people, and we've all got challenges, and we've all got stresses and things we're trying to deal with. And actually changing your diet and your lifestyle is a huge undertaking, realistically. And it can be a real challenge for people. So we need to make it as easy as possible. And
absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I again want to remind people, you're listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. This is Kathleen Gage. I've been talking with Kayleigh of Kakadu Creatives, and we'll put that in the show notes. And I encourage you, go to the website, Kakadu Creatives. That's KAKADU creatives.com. Go there and check out how creative their website is. And they've got a great team of people, and whatever your needs for branding, for websites, for logo design, or a full package, I would encourage you to have a conversation with Kayleigh, because you may as well start right. And especially if you're rebranding into the vegan world, why not work with somebody who really understands that mindset? And earlier you had mentioned about somebody initially advising you against being so vocal and visible about it. And then they said, well, maybe it's not a bad idea. I actually, as I was going through my change in my business, I had a business advisor who said, that'll be the death of your business. That'll be the worst mistake you make. And this was at a seminar, and I was up on the platform, and she was coaching me, and I'm like thinking in my mind, nah, I don't think she's right. And then, and I just, I was like, okay, whatever. And then I spoke with a speakers bureau recently, somebody who used to be a client of mine. And she said, I would love to represent you and get you out on the platform again. And, we were having the discussion. She goes, but there is one thing. And I'm like, what? And she goes, you can't talk about that vegan stuff. And I said, well, then I can't let you represent me. It's just not going to work. And I thought, okay, am I making a mistake there? And I thought, no, I'm not. And what was amazing is a few days later, I had a woman reach out to me who has a vegan speakers bureau. And it's like, oh my gosh, if we honor who we are, if we're willing to stand up for our values, it all works out. And so in closing, what are your final thoughts for people, and how do you encourage people to really, in business, stay with their values, stay aligned, and really take the risk? Because for some people, it is a risk to move into what their truth about being vegan is.
I mean, my advice is do it. I totally understand reservations and worry about, oh, is it going to affect the business? Will we lose clients? Will we survive it? But I mean, I've spoken to so many businesses now who have transitioned and who have brought their ethics and whether it's veganism or not, whether it's literally that they're really focused on the environment, or they really hate the fact that there's pollution and chemicals, whatever it is that you're passionate about. Whenever I've spoken to people and they've transitioned and they've brought those ethics and that passion into their business, they've not regretted it, because I think when you're passionate about something, that gives you drive, that gives you a reason to get up in the morning, that makes you say, I'm going to push the extra hard because I love this and I'm working with people that get it and I'm growing this movement, or I'm solving this mission, or I'm making this impact. And don't get me wrong, it's hard. It's still hard. It's still a business at the end of the day. There's still challenges. You still have days where you just think, oh my God, this is just too much. But I think when you've got that passion behind the business, when you have those days where you say, oh, this is just too much, I'm tired, I just want to have a day off, you have that thing in the back of your mind that says, yeah, but look at what you're doing, look at who you're working with, look at what you're achieving, look at the passion, and that helps to drive you forward. So my sort of finishing words would be just do it, in the words of a very large brand.
Well, I'm so glad you said that you're still going to work hard. And what I've discovered with this one project I'm working on right now, I am working hard. I mean, there is no doubt, but I'm so passionate about it. And I love what the organization is doing and the impact they're going to have. And so even though I'm working long hours, I feel great. Where if I was doing the exact same project for a company that wasn't within our industry, within our movement, within our mission, I wouldn't be as excited. So Kayleigh, it has been delightful talking with you. I know you're just going to be a huge, huge success beyond where you already are. I know you're going to have a major impact in the vegan movement. And thank you so much for coming on the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And this is Kayleigh Nicolaou with the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Go ahead and leave a review and a rating. That helps us to be seen by more people. And after all, isn't that what we're trying to help each other do? Have a great day, a great evening, a great middle of the night, whenever you may be listening or watching this podcast episode.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.